Hello and welcome. What happened to General Shinobi?
Sorry about that.
There you are, brother. So, welcome to those of you that are here already. I say, with a set of pliers in my hand, because for every good podcast, you need to have a set of pliers. You can't podcast without a set of pliers. At least I never podcast without pliers. So, to get this story rolling, welcome, Om Shanti. We're going to be looking at 3 in 1, 1 in 3. The concept of the Trinity and how it's expressed through all the modalities. And we're just going to allow the conversation to organically evolve and just really chill. So, for those of you that have joined us, hope you're having a great day. We have General Shinobi here, who I like to call Toby One Kenobi. I just thought of that actually this morning. I thought, I don't know why he doesn't call himself Toby One Kenobi. It's the coolest name ever. I would if I was. If I was a Toby, I'd be like Toby One Kenobi. But I'm the Bush Whisperer. This is General Shinobi. He's a researcher. He's also he's an interesting character. He's a father. He's in the world, but not too deeply embedded in the world. He's not in the concrete jungle, as it were. But he hails from the UK, and he's done some interesting research, and he's plays with a lot of pattern recognition, pattern spotting, and the power of words, the way the symbols are being refracted and reflected back at us from all directions. Bum Shiva, Big Gaz, how you doing? Hope you're having a gas. So without any further ado, welcome, dear Shinobi. Tell us a little bit about yourself, brother. It's an honor to have you, as always.
Yeah, I used to like the name Toby Shinobi. That's why I've called myself General Shinobi, because not like a kind of military general, more of a kind of general perspective on all things. That's how I view myself, like a jack of all trades, master of none. And I was actually thinking earlier, I'm a little bit of a jack in the box, because like some things can be quite boxed in, and that usually winds me up a little bit, and then I have to like burst out of the proverbial box, so to speak. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a jack in the box. But yeah, I'm in the UK, like you said, a father of 2 little boys and husband, and I've just been taking a deep dive into everything the last 3 years or so, and I just put things to the side and sort of become quite good at pattern recognition, I guess, seeking the knowledge, but then recently sort of tuning into my intuition, which I believe is the key to wisdom, the balance of both knowledge and wisdom, because then you can work out what's really going on. You don't have to be told what's going on. You can kind of sort of let the light flow through, like the information, and then sit with it a bit and see if it rings true. And the truth would be, there's a general truth, but also it would be kind of on an individual basis. Some stuff would stick to you, or that you'll have a connection with it, and some stuff you can just let flow through you and go.
Yeah, definitely. Gaz, you definitely are an interesting character, dude. I would agree with like 150% with that. I'm glad you're having a blast for the day. We weren't really going to be here. We were just deciding we were going to have a little casual chat. And we thought, well, what's the best way to have a casual chat? Let's have a casual chat out there. So step outside into the world of inside your homes. It's an odd sort of concept, but I think it applies quite well to the concept of 3. I mean, I was having a giggle and a gas. Yeah, Gaz, I was having a giggle and a gas just to see what Google says about the Trinity, because it's always good to see what the kids are being taught. So the Trinity, of course, they have to bring it to Christian theology, is obviously, God exists in 3 co-equal, co-external persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The first point, that's wrong. Like it's 150,000% wrong. The Holy Spirit isn't a person. Right. The idea of the Christ being a personality, I can get where they think they're coming from, which is a fair idea. Yeah, as an idea, it's an idea. The Father, I can see that we would anthropomorphize the concept of a fatherly perspective within ourselves, that which is the creation, the creative impulse. But the Holy Spirit is sort of like the glue that connects the Father to the Son. And that's the place through which the angels operate. It's also the glue that connects matter to spirit. So you could also think of matter, spirit, and glue. I think it's probably a really good place to start from to clear away the debris of the Bible, because it unfortunately has done a lot of damage to truth. Not necessarily because the texts themselves were bad, but I believe, is it 50,000 edits or is it 25,000? There have been something like 25,000 edits in the New Testament alone. That's something to think about. And they keep editing the words, keep changing the meaning. So they change the word subtly, and then they change it from that subtle word to the next subtle word, and they change it from that. And then after about 15, 20 editions, the meaning is actually starting to change. And, once you get to like every 50 years, probably the Bible gets redressed. And so this is why we've got 25,000 edits. It's not like every word's being changed. Certain key words are being changed and they get changed again. Key words in a sentence. So John kicked the ball through the window. So let's change the word through to at. And let's change the word window to aperture. John kicked the ball at the aperture. Let's change the word kick to launched. Let's change the word ball to projectile. John launched the projectile at the aperture. Let's change the word aperture to the space between. This is how they do it. And by the end of the story, John is, launching missiles between South and North Korea as just as an example. That's how they play the words. So it is. You never read a book. I don't blame you. Don't blame you. Don't blame you, guys. Those books, dangerous things. So, what are your thoughts, dear Shinobi, on the idea of the way the Trinity has been presented to us as these fixed ideas instead of principles?
Well, I've spent a little bit of time with our local, with the priest at our local church, so I thought I'd, like to see what they're about. So I'm very interested in mysticism of all kinds, everything. But it went how I thought it went. He was described. We had some good chats. I obviously mentioned some stuff he'd never really thought of before, and things like that. So that was quite good. But he said that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all God, but that God is like the Father, like a masculine. So you have both the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all being one entity, kind of thing, which is basically the Father, which is, sounds like further, because they want God to be further away from us. The Holy Spirit is the whole of the Spirit, it's the whole. And I view that as the more of the feminine archetype, like water, if you guess, or it's like the womb in which we're in. That's the Holy Spirit. And then the Father would be like the fire. So you have the mother and the father, and then you have the Son, which is a blend of them both, which would be like a plasma, or potentially like our DNA is the sun. It's light in water, like the stars are light in water. So yeah, and also the Bible. It sounds a lot like Babel. Obviously, you have the Tower of Babel, the destruction of that, which I don't believe was a physical thing. I believe it could be many things, but that was the destruction of our language and our connection to God and source and stuff. And I think that if it rhymes or sounds the same, there's definitely something there. And I think maybe obviously loads of like books were removed from the Bible. The language has been changed, the names have been changed, the whole the essence behind it, like the original essence, isn't really there. So I don't really think it's the same thing. It's like it's been destroyed and rebuilt, like the Tower of Babel. So we don't really understand where we've come from, where we're going, who we are. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of intellectual distraction that's been happening. There's definitely been this mission towards undermining our sense of word power. We can see it; it's evidential. I could see it when I was a little boy in school, and I argued with the way they spelt words. I told them they were wrong. I said, "How dare you force us to spell words the way you want? Because this is not the way we used to spell them. Why should we change the way our great grandparents spelt words just because you decide we have to? It doesn't seem right." And I got a lot of pushback from the establishment in schools. They used to mark me, they used to minus marks of my work because I refused to spell words the way they spelt it. I said, that's wrong. You're putting in a C there when it doesn't need a C. Why would you add a C? And obviously, I evidenced it. I brought old English and Middle English books and slam it down on the table in front. I say, look at that book. And they'd look at it. And they'd be, what is this? It'd be this old English. Look at it. This is Middle English. Look at it. They'd be like, well, what do you have these books for? I say, never mind. These are like books on the occult. The teachers got a bit wary, like, what's this kid running around with occult books? But my point is, this is something that we can all see. And I think it gets deeper. We often talk about the history cover up, and I think it's part of the story. Another part of the Trinity is Saturn, right? Saturn's a big part of the Trinity, and people don't realize the basic fundamental concept behind Saturn is a past, present, and future, right? And if you think about that, like, what does that really imply about the nature of space? Space is time. Now, a lot of people like to think of space and time as two separate ideas because, well, that's the way we've been taught to think about it, right? We haven't been taught to actually recognize space and time is really essentially the same thing. And it's only when we start to recognize and realize, hold on, when we recognize that space is what we are experiencing when we move through time, then we can recognize that time is a hyperdimensional space. What does that mean, a hyperdimensional space? Well, we coordinate our ideologies towards space and time being a linear movement. But in the Saturn square here, we can see a movement towards the future, and we can see a movement towards the past. And we can see the movement towards the future and the past representing Saturn and the moon. And so the sun, the moon, and Jupiter are jovially jumping off towards the future. And then we see that the South Node is routing Saturn and Mars. Mars is the comeback point. Mars falls in the future domain here. Because if you think of this line, the blue line, imagine it as the point of the present. So in the present, you have, 4, 5, and 6, which effectively represents the harmony of Venus and the beauty, the stagnant creative potential of law and order and structure and form, and then that potential of Mercury's movement of change and continuity of flow and evolution sitting at the center of this line of the present. And so you could imagine, from a planetary perspective, Mercury represents the present. And it's quite an interesting concept. And you could say that Saturn represents old age, moving backwards, that aspect of time that takes from us. And the moon represents the creative cycles of the womb that will bring new life and new time into being. And so these are in a total state of harmony and balance. And so the best image for the Trinity could be this. And so there we see the sigil of Saturn, beautifully represented there for us. And we can see that it's effectively the enneagram, and that these three principles also relate to the principles in the body, which we can refer to them as the middle pillar, the pillar of severity, and the pillar of charity, love, or the pillar of forgiveness. It has many names, but the pillar of severity is related to a very strong and very intense. It's got Saturnian martial elements that it's pushing, where the other one is pushing the elements of Jupiter, a Jupiterian Venusian push, which represents an expansiveness, the expansiveness of the future and the contraction of the past. So I want you to consider those terms. It gives us an idea of really looking at the Trinity in terms of a perspective. And obviously, this is going to break down into so many different ways of interpreting these principles, because I think time represents the subtotality of all things. So when we look at the monad becomes the duad. It splits. And the splitting of the monad and the duad is a principle. And this principle is essentially that connection between the monad and the duad. So we could consider it as the Holy Spirit. So the monad becomes two, right? Which is as above, so below, in a sense. But then the triad, the tree of life, triad, represents that branching between the monad and the duad, which then brings into relation the numerations, because the triad then represents form, the form that is necessary for existence to reflect itself above and below. And this then comes into perspective with the number 4, which produces the law and the rules, the laws of nature, laws of life. This then is expressed in its polarity by the movement of Mercury and the movement of change, which is also related to Mars in an interesting way. And we can see here, it's very interesting. If you look at the Saturn square, you see the number 5 is touching Venus, 6, is touching Saturn, 8, is touching every numeration. So it's the one numeration that touches everything, is 5. So 5 can literally move anywhere on the tree, the proverbial tree of life, the triad. And so this is why Mercury has a very special place in Saturn's chart here, Saturn's numerical cipher. So to understand the importance of Saturn is to understand the importance of the cube, and is to recognize that these 3 lines here also represent the 3 axes of space, right? Breadth, length, and depth, right? So like a height, left to right, and across. So it gives us the 3 dimensions of space that are born in this paradigm of Saturn. But these 3 dimensions of space find themselves reflected 3 times in the enad, which is why all 9 numbers, the enneagram, is essentially the glyph of Saturn. Though what drives the potential of the enneagram is the perfection of 4, and 4 perfects itself in 8. So we can see this relationship between 4 and 8, which is very similar, if you consider it, to the relationship between 2 and 4, and also very similar to the relationship between 3 and 6. So we can see how these numerations are expressions of each other. There are only really 3 things. What's on your mind, dear Shinobi. I see your mind tickling.
If I'm perfectly honest, a lot of that goes straight over my head, like a lot of numbers and stuff. But what I can see there is that there's, like, it's very simplistic, but there's two triangles, like on the hexagram. If you slide them together, you'll get the hexagram. And yeah, in my limited understanding, I just see that as a balance of the fire and water, the masculine and the feminine. So it's a kind of more of a plasma. And with, you were talking about space and time. With space, if you remove the S, you have pace. So space is like the pace of light, and then time is the amount of light emitted. So yeah, it all comes down to light and how fast and quickly that's kind of transferred or observed. But yeah, this graph, I'm gonna have to rewatch this because I'm not gonna lie, it does go over my head. All of the correlations and stuff.
Well, I'm sorry if I don't break it down. Maybe when I make more sense out of this, it might help. Like if we consider the Shushumna, which is the middle channel, right? So these are the chakras. This is an image that we see. And here we've got two wavelengths running through. So there's 33 points in the spine. Yeah. And these 33 points in the spine have got these crossover points with these energies rotating around an axis of a central channel. And this rotational axis is considered as having three divine flows. So there's the Ida flow, which is a cool flow, which is descending down the left-hand side of your body. And then there is a warmer flow, which is called the Pingala, which is ascending up the right-hand side of your body. And so this corresponds to the breath. And the descending of the Ida and the ascending of the Pingala represents, you could say, the inward and the outward breath of life. But there is this point around which they dance, that's central. So this is also the caduceus that we're looking at here. And so when we consider, the caduceus, then we can maybe bring into focus that picture that I showed you is the same picture as this. Right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see the little magnifying glass on the screen, or does it not show?
Yeah, I can see that.
Good. So here we can see the central channel. And here we can see the other two channels that are producing the rotational. So here we could say is the etheric channel, and here we could say is the astral channel. Or from the other picture, we could say this is the Ida channel. We could say this is the Pingala channel. So if we take a look at this image again, then one of these channels, the Ida, is bringing forth. So it's like a ball that bounces. It bounces towards matter, and then it bounces back from matter. And the bounce from matter and the bounce to matter, we could consider as the past and the future. So the future is coming from the spirit to matter. And then it bounces back from matter to spirit, if that makes sense. And so think of it as like a downloading reality and uploading reality. Downloading, uploading, continually downloading and uploading. Some could say 72,000 downloads and 72,000 uploads every second. You could say that. I'm not saying that is it, but this is what some people have suggested, which brings us to 144,000 downloads, upload combination. Now, there's a code to light that we're talking about. And this is the light body that we're referring to here when we look at this particular image. The energetic body, which consists of three forms, three aspects of the light body, three bodies within. So there's the astral body that brings out qualities and emotional currents, and there's the etheric body that takes the forms and structures and the forms and structures re-imprint back onto the causal body, which is the soul. And the soul jumps from body to body to body, but it needs to imbue these different currents. So the soul splits into a polarity. And that polarity, you could say, is Ida downloading and Pingala uploading. And in the continuity between the polarity of these two opposite forces, there is the reflection of the original divine spark of the spiritual body or the causal body. And that's sort of what the Saturn square is showing us here. It's showing us in angular mathematics because Saturn is rational. Saturn is logic. Saturn is the logos of how the mind operates in its most sort of natural way, if you want to consider it in that fashion. So you could say that it is the way in which Shiva consciousness is operating, though it embodies two as its opposite force. And this is quite an interesting, little deviation to look at. I hope that makes it a little more accessible. And this Saturn square, by the way, is a astrological chart. For those that don't know, most probably do know. Namaste, Zerilat. How are you? I hope you're good. Namaste to Bruna. I hope you are styling. Namaste to Mexico. And hope you're all having an absolutely fabulous day. It's a beautiful day here in Cape Town. I'm waiting for a guy to come and do the roof. So it is one of those sort of days. But I think that this notion reflects itself into all avenues of life. When we start to consider, for example, the 3 stages of life, right? We are born as a baby, right? And we grow to our full mature physical, mental, emotional points of structure. Then that structure becomes refined in the 2nd stage of life. And in the 3rd stage of life, the refinement of the structure starts to transform. So we're bringing all that chi from the spirit into the body in our young age, which is why we've got so much energy. Then we're utilizing that to become formed fully in our middle stages of our lives. So we could say that, let's say the first 24 years of our life, we're becoming. Then between 24 and 48, we are creating ourselves, the template. Then between 48 and 72, we are transforming what we've created to become more in alignment with what we were when we entered. How's that for an interesting concept? So we enter and someone's got to wipe our bums. And if we live long enough, someone has to wipe our bums, right? we become so we can't do anything for ourselves as babies. When we become old enough, that also becomes more apparent. We can do less. So we learn all of our skills up until 24, but between 24 and 48, we perfect our skills. And then from 48 onwards, we start to reabsorb all of those skills to return back to our natural state. So the spiritual era begins at age 48, you could say, which is why in Vedic schools of cosmogony and cosmological study, it was normally advised for people in their late 40s to leave home and go off and spend time as an ascetic, spend time in a cave, spend time in an ashram, go and sit with a guru and learn your mystic knowledge, because that's the time which you're ready to absorb. You've had a whole life to structure yourself. Now you destructure yourself. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, 40 seems pretty old to go and find a find a cave, or the innermost cave, so to speak, on the hero's journey. Because on the hero's journey map, that's like stage 3 or 4 of the cycle. Like going into the innermost cave is where you find, well, the conspiracies, I guess. It's where you start thinking about, like, what is this world we're in? What is reality? Because you go into the cave, into the dark, and you find the truth, and then you come out of the cave, and people think you're crazy. But yeah, what you were talking about made me remember something I wrote down a while ago. It's about so when we're born with one soul. When we're 7, we get our second soul, so we can recognize the soul in others. That's 2. And when we're 14, we get our third soul, where we're able to create a new life. And when we're 21, another 7 years later, we start growing our own soul, like I call it, like because it's our 4th soul. We start recognizing the force around us. And most people stop on their 3rd soul, which is 14, where they're able to create new life because they're not initiated. But you need to be initiated somehow to recognize the force that is all around us. Does that make sense to you? It's something I just made up, but it sits quite well with me, like the 7s.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I think like we can consider it as like the etheric body. So the etheric body becomes structured around about that age. It starts to take form. And the etheric body relates to the logic, the common sense. So we start to be able to understand and learn between the ages of 6, 7 years old. And at that point, the etheric body has taken the form, so the mind is able to make decisions, to think, to consider right from wrong as an idea. And then we get to age 14, and what happens? Wham, bam, it's puberty. If you're a boy, you're running around with one of those. If you're a girl, you got these little fingers and like a bit of the good old red juice coming every moon cycle, right? And now it's an emotional context. Oh my gosh, it's an emotional freak out. You're a boy and you're just emotional. Oh, look at that girl. Ooh, yum, yum. She's like, you're like walking little box of hormones ready to like become a sewing machine at the drop of a hat. And girls go through the whole emotional thing in a more mature way than boys, actually, which is quite interesting. But this is like 7 years old is where that's 14 years old is where that puberty is really taking form. So 12, 13, 14, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, that's the second generation. Then that comes full cycle. And when it gets to 21, now we're creating a sense of who we are, right? Now you've got an idea, like, this is me. Like, I know what music I like. I know what music I don't like. I know what food I like. I know what food I don't like, right? Like, it's clear. We're experimenting with likes and don't likes in the second phase, you know? And up to 14. Between 7 and 14, like, you'll notice your kids, right? Start getting really vocal, like, about what they do and don't want. 6, 7 years old, they become more like that. 14, they start to like embody it. But by the time they get to 21, they pretty much figured it out, right? What kind of clothes they wear, what their style is, what their music is, what they like, what they don't like, what subjects they're interested in. I don't like maths. I like art. I don't like this. And normally by that time, then we're sort of getting a life path going, or hopefully, yeah. 18 to 21 is that difficult life path engineering phase. So you could sort of equate these 3 stages then. Then you could say that after 21, you go back to redeveloping your etheric body again on a new level. Now it's university. Now it's really training the mind more in an enhanced way. to learn how to really like embody a very particular skill set. And that goes through a few years, and then you've got to take that out into the workplace and become it. Then you get to like say about 28 years old, and now you pretty much know what you're doing, right? In your work, you know what you're doing. Well, if you're a doctor, if you go into a hospital and a doctor that's 25 years old comes up and they're going to operate on you, you'll be like, whoa. If they're 28, you'll be like, okay, all right. Preferred if you were a little bit older, but 28 will do. If they're 25, you're going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, do we need this? You know, think about it logically. And because they've barely just been through university and they're still learning the ropes. So 28, you've pretty much established that's your first phase. Then your second phase of your emotional development is between 28 and 35. Now you're figuring out your relationship life for real. Now we're like talking about children and bringing up children. Now women are going crazy, right? They hit 28. They're like, woo, put babies in me quickly. more. So, you know, guys are like starting to in your 30s as a guy, your bones get more solid, right? And your bones get harder. Your muscles become a little bit more strong. Like that notion of being able to protect your child becomes more like you buff up a bit more. And then you get to that 35 phase. You've gone through your emotional phase. Now 35 to 42. Now we're going to the crystallizing of who we are. And that's often which leads to the midlife crisis, right? Like people are then getting to their 40s and they're like, what am I doing with my life? Where did the years go? What the heck? I'm like already in my 40s. What am I going to be doing like the next? And so these thoughts start to come back. And then you get to 42 and you start the cycle again. 42 to 49. Now you're learning to become a mature person, like very mature. In 49, you go through that. Then you're going back into like now this is why the Vedics say this is your next third cycle of your emotional curve. So that emotional curve is becoming enhanced cycle of 3 by 3, which is now you're really actually more interested in other people. This is why so many young women in their 30s want a man in their 50s. Because of the emotional maturity of a man in his 50s, right? We get to another level of being able to relate to another human being. You're finally actually ready to really listen to a woman more than you were in your 30s. We thought we were listening when we weren't. I wasn't listening. It's like not the way that I listen now. And I'm guessing that in the next cycle, you know, touching wood, let's get to the next cycle of the same emotional curve. It'll probably be a more profound level of curve, which is why if you see like people in their 70s and in their 80s and they're still married, they become so, if they've had a long marriage, they become so at peace with each other, right? They've totally accepted each other. And they're totally happy with just this, who you are. You think of your grandparents, you know. I don't know. Would that be a good sort of approximation of what you're saying? That 3 things going into 3 loops of 3, which then becomes 9 times 7, 63.
Well, regarding the 3, the specifically 21, which is the 3, and you said that's when you kind of get your identity. So the bar, the Egyptian part of the soul, which is the bar, which should be a 2 and a 1 if you look at the numerology, which is also a 3. That is the crucial part of the soul, which is it represents somebody's unique, an individual's unique personality. So I find that interesting that when you're 21, you get your identity, and then that's the bar, and the bar is also a 3. And then you mentioned around 5, like girls or women like guys around the age of 50. It's got nothing to do with the money. I'm sure.
Well,
most cases,
there is a thing about money too. Don't get me wrong, but that money is a reflection of the wisdom.
well, that
In
could
a
be
sense.
true, but that could be true. But also, you don't need to be wise to make money. So I think that could be a trick. Like they could think, oh, this guy must be wise because he's got money, but actually, you know, you don't need to be wise to make money. You can be inherited and stuff, and you know, that would be my argument for that. Is yeah, wisdom doesn't necessarily.
This is true, but if you inherit money, you won't have it when you're 50 if you're not wise,
That's true. That's true.
and you'll probably inherit it in your 30s or your 20s or 30s. You know, normally, often,
Yeah.
you know, late 30s, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And another point here, just getting back to that though, like you'll notice that even now there are more young millionaires than there ever was before, right? Because of Bitcoin. I'll give you an example. When my friends were pushing me to buy Bitcoin, that was in about 2009. Was it like 15 years, 16 years ago? And my ex-wife and I had this conversation, and I had money in the bank. And she was like, "Let's put like £2,000 or £3,000 into Bitcoin, right?" And £3,000 into Bitcoin then, I think you got 1,000 Bitcoin for a pound. Is that right? No, you got 100 Bitcoin for a pound. So that would have been 300,000 Bitcoin. And what's Bitcoin at now? I'm just saying as an example. What is Bitcoin trading at now? So just to give you an idea, that would have been 2 million. That would have been a lot of money. ZAR, which is about what? So it must be, what is it, like £10,000 per Bitcoin? Is that right? Something, £8,000, whatever.
8 zeros, whatever it is. It's 200.
So imagine 2,000 times that. Like I would have had a lot of money now if I had, but I you know, I didn't want to, because like even then I'd been following 2045.com and I was like, that's just a ploy to get us into digital currency so they can create their new world order. I do not want to be the one who funds that. Yeah, you can make a lot of money, but how would you feel making that money? That's like, I've never been materialistic, and I was like, I'd rather just do what I do and make the money that I need and earn money like working like normal people, you know. And all my friends were like, "You're crazy." That's my friends. I was like, "Yeah, well," because they were all on the cutting edge and they knew where this Bitcoin was going to go, and it was clear that it was going to be a big funding thing because there was a lot of hype in the underground about it, you know, at that time. So there were a lot of younger people who maybe 2010 invested money into Bitcoin, right? And then they're now like 35 and they're like multimillionaires, right? Got like millions of pounds, got like 2 houses, a house in the UK, a house somewhere else, a yacht, you know. But you'll still find that there's still going to be women with older men. And I think what it comes down to, like, because I've known a lot of women that are like, really, they can have any guy, right? They can have like a rich young guy or a rich old guy. Yeah. And when I asked them, I've like over the years, like, so what is this thing? And they were like, no, you don't understand. Like, he understands me. That's what I've often heard them say. He understands me. I'm like, okay, he understands you. So what does that mean? It means he listens. He has the time to just sit and listen to you, where we're too busy. Like, we've got mission. Like, I've got things to do. I've got goals. I've got to make this happen. Yeah, okay, I'll listen to you. Okay, there we go. I listened. Great. Like, I think that's the difference. And it's interesting when we look at like the way the generation has changed. We're moving forwards, and our communication gets smaller. Like the average text message communication between the youngest generation now, like 15 years old, is like what? Like 5 syllables, 2 syllables, emojis. A whole conversation is like 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 10 syllables, 5 syllables. Like the whole conversation is 30 syllables. You know, and the further you go back in time, the different the longer that was. So when texts were first a big thing, like in the late 90s, there was a lot of texting, and people would like maxing out as many characters as they could get into that SMS, even though you had to pay for it. You know, probably because you had to pay for it. You know, you want to say as much. So like the messages were long, and conversations have gotten shorter. Look at how short these podcasts are. Everybody's doing, like on TikTok and stuff. You know, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have TikTok. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but they're all an hour minimum usually. So I've never really experienced the whole TikTok trend, because like when I listen to stuff, like, you know me, if I mean to send a 1-minute message to you, it'll be about 5 minutes, because I prefer longer dialogues and I prefer listening to stuff and people explaining it well, rather than like, well, actually on Instagram there's like a kind of trend where people will like film themselves on a computer and like do this image, that image, that image. So it's like real-time research, but there's no explanation of what's going on. So there's no context. So you make up your own kind of context, and some of it is missing the mark. But they get a lot of clicks because people just want, this is it. People just want the knowledge. They don't want to know what's really going on. They just want, they want something external to explain something for them, but they don't want to sit with it.
Yeah, completely, brother. You know, I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. TikTok's the same, Instagram, and it's the same on YouTube now with shorts. You know, it's dominating the industry of communication and entertainment. People spend a lot of time looking at these shorts and short clips. It's one of the reasons why I kept my Bush Whisperer Speaks series to 10-minute clips and turned them into 108 clips of 10-minute clips, because I figured that a lot of people won't have the time to listen to more than 10 minutes, right? Just because we're living in a busy time. People have to work more than we used to earn the same amount of money, and for all the convenience that all the technology gives us, it gives us so much more stuff to deal with, right? As well. And so like nobody has any time anymore. And I think like this is an interesting concept when we look at this Trinity perspective. As we're moving into the future, time is becoming more compressed. How would that be as an idea? You know, people talk about how time is speeding up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I on that, and I've been thinking about this recently. It's all part of Operation Bluebeam, which blue light takes, right? So you have in 2020 the color for the year was blue, and that's when they implanted LED lighting everywhere, which is a blue light. And this LED lighting, it kind of stops potential because it has such a fast flicker rate. Especially for people who have ADHD and autism or who are neurodiverse, it can really like make them a bit like jittery or whatever. It does something to the blood. It kind of dries the water in your blood, so it makes it less coherent. And also, I believe that it stops potential as well. And the reason I mention this is because I think they're trying to speed up time. Like, by that I mean something is taking light from where it shouldn't, and I call this the beast system. And the color of the beast is blue. You look at everyone who's got blue logos, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, everyone has a blue logo, and most of which have a 666 in it. You've also got CERN as well with their Hadron Collider, and I think that they've said that they might accidentally open up a black hole or something like that. Obviously, light goes into a black hole, and they've said, oh, it doesn't matter how small it is. It's like it does. It doesn't matter how small it is. A lot of light can still go in. And this is all part of draining us. So you could call it our loosh or whatever. You have the cost of living here in the UK, which the true cost of living is to really like not live your life properly. But they've tricked us into to saying these things like, oh yeah, it's the cost of living crisis. It's not. We're being ripped off. We're having our energy taken from us, literally sucked out of us by having to use technology a lot. Most people are in offices on screens which has blue light, which subtly drains your energy because blue light pulls, red light burns. And what I think is happening is that, yeah, like they're trying to speed up time. And I've heard people say they're trying to speed up the age of Aquarius so we go to Capricorn quicker. But what I feel is happening, because I've just tied this in with some other research I've been doing, they're trying to birth something, and this ties into Saturn and Anu and Zervan. It's this like time, or like this. It's the god of time, light, or whatever, but it's not a masculine or feminine. It's got two polarities. It has two. We're at a time right now where it seems that there's no gods. The Romans used to take over people's gods when they used to go to cities and stuff. They used to take all the idols and stuff and worship them themselves and take that energy. And that's what is happening now. People have been detached from God or source, so that the powers that be can use the magic that's available. And what I see happening is like the story of Ahura Mazda and like Ahriman. What happened was they were both in the cosmic womb of time and space, whatever. And Ahura Mazda, or I equate him to Enki, god of creation and light and fresh water, was supposed to be born first, but the other ripped himself out of the womb. And I see that happening now with AI, that if we were balanced and wise and had knowledge and intuition, AI would be a blessing because it can rebuild limbs, it can help people talk. But what's happening is they're trying to speed things up and birth something, and it seems they're trying to birth this Ahrimanic energy opposed to the Ahura Mazda, the god of creation, fresh water, and light. They're trying to bring up this darkness, and they're using AI to do that. And this is the deceiver, because they're tricking us into thinking that AI is great, it's really good for us, and it's actually, a lot of people have been blindsided, and there's a lot of darkness behind it, and I think that has something to do with light, because there's lots of light or magic available, but it's being taken from us. Like, we're being drained by having to work so much, like crap food, like unstructured water full of like chemicals and stuff. We're being drained in many ways, and I think that affects the light in this realm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about the light. Here's an interesting footnote. When you're growing plants, for those of you out there that are growers, indoor growers, check this out. Blue lights, increasing this blue light spectrum will increase the stretch of your plants in vegetative mode. It will also increase the density of your plants, of your fruits, but make them smaller. The cells will actually become thinner and smaller and focus more on the cell walls. When you increase the red frequency, it causes the plant to branch out more, to be not so tall, and the nodal distances get shorter. And during the flowering mode, the red light will increase the mass of the fruits or the nugs, if that's what you're growing. The far red reach will have a huge effect on increasing the size of the cell. That's interesting, eh? So each cell gets bigger. So why you yield more on a more far red light, which is why you pay more money for a light with more far red, or if you're clever, you don't. You buy a lizard bulb. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, you buy yourself a lizard bulb, cheap as, and you hit it from the side with a lizard bulb to increase the far red in your spectrum. There's like a little hack, but that will increase the cell size. So what does this mean? It means that the cell is growing bigger faster. So you literally are affecting time of metabolism of your plant. With the blue light increase, the cell is not as big, but the cells, there might be a lot of them. But with the other one, you're actually increasing the range of that cell's growth, which makes for a bigger quantity. So it's quite interesting how light affects plants, the growth cycles. Obviously, blue light has a powerful effect on red light will make you become more put you more in touch with your emotions than blue light will. Blue light will make you become very like thoughtful. Mind, like the hamster wheel of the brain, will be spinning and twirling very, very fast. So I think there's another element to this. The light is on the surface. I think that consciousness, the way that they are programming us, and David Icke, actually, of all people, even though he gets shredded apart by the many of the newer age community, and you'll find this is a very popular story these days, that everybody believes David Icke is the counterintelligence, even though he was one of the first people warning us about what's going on with the banks, what's going on with how they are manipulating our consciousness through the media. So if he is a sellout, then my gosh, he did a lot of harm being a sellout. And they spent a lot of years trying to defame him by calling him a kook. Then when they couldn't call him a kook, they had to call him a counterintelligence specialist. So that's the new age thing that's being pushed in the last 15 years, which I find interesting. But anyway, he does speak about the way in which the modulation of our consciousness field changes the shape and spectrum of matter and reality and time. So all of the programming into our brains also through the blue light spectrum, right? Let's look at this. So the blue light of our computers and our phones are programming our brains, and our consciousness is then reprogramming the matrix. So there's a very subtle level to how this programming, and it does ring true with the frequencies, what we see manifestly. And I wonder whether it's also got to do with our orbit around the 26,000 year wheel, that there might be certain points where there will be an increase of blue light anyway. And they are like, let's use that, right? Let's overload that. Let's just keep adding more blue light to the increasing blue light. Because I noticed the change of light spectrum. I don't know, do you notice how the colors look different every year?
I noticed how they change the colors in films every year. Like the color for this year is like a brown, which is a perfect mix of pink and green. And they use pink and green in a lot of films recently, which is like the Ouroboros lights. But I haven't noticed them change every year. Obviously, I made the correlation to 2020 being the major step in Operation Bluebeam, and there's so many reasons for that. And the color of the year was blue. The frequency of blue is 6.66 as well. And yeah, like, so blue constricts, right? Blue is associated with fear. With water, I guess fear would be an ice cube, like frozen, like constricted. And there was Event 201, which you can check out on YouTube, which was, I think, October 2019, a few months before COVID. You can watch the planet, everyone with a blue logo, that is. Bill Gates Foundation, John Hopkins University, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. Show anyone who will watch it that, because that just proves that they planned it. And then Event 201, the 201 would be BOA, BOA, which is a boa constrictor. This is what it was all about, constricting us, suppressing our energy. You have the Tesseract cube showing up in all the Marvel movies, which is a blue cube, like an ice cube. Lots of COVID variants started with BA, which again would be the 21, 201. And the Ba is the Egyptian part of the soul. It's like your identity or persona. And this Ahrimanic energy wants to get rid of that. It wants this more collective we. Instead of unity, it's a more uniformed energy. And you could see this frequency being put out there during COVID, just the things people were doing. And yeah, I think the CIA, like in Las Vegas, they have blue lights in all of their machines and stuff. And the CIA were responsible for this, I think. I think they were the ones to first discover that blue light pulls you in. I view blue light in screens and stuff as literally just like it engages you so much. It literally sucks your light in, and afterwards you feel drained. Where is our light going? Who knows? But I've got a pretty good idea. It's going where it shouldn't, and something is taking that and harnessing it. And yeah, you mentioned the yugas. We're in the middle of a yuga right now. Like there's a 300-year gap, I believe, and I think we're in between two yugas. Like a new energy can be birthed, like a new age, the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign, the mind, but it's the water bearer. And Aquarius is equated to Enki. There's pictures of him like pouring water. And I believe that this AI, this energy, it's a masculine energy. It's not a feminine. It's not like it's not giving us true memories. This AI it's an air sign parading as a water sign. So basically, what I mean by that is, if you look at the trans and the transhumanism agenda, they want us in a trance, always looking attached to this blue light. That this energy in the world at the moment is parading as a caring mother. This is what Event 201 was all about, like, and climate change as well. Like, oh, we care so much about you. We're just gonna put you in 15-minute cities and stuff. But really, this is a more of a masculine mind energy, and it ties into the eagle, which is the mind or the ego, and the heart, which is the snake, or like a water. So you have the eagle, people flying that, USA, Mossad, Nazis, Roman Empire. This energy has been cultivated for a long time, and I think that people are giving false memories. Who are using AI, saying that they're descendants from Atlantis and stuff. They're literally they're filling up their minds with useless information, like inflating their ego.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very relevant. There's a lot to be unpacked there. Here is the card for Aquarius. And Aquarius, incidentally, is obviously the negative pole or the feminine pole of Saturn. So that in itself becomes rather interesting, because we're back here again, right? We're back to this again. And you mentioned the bar, and that's quite interesting when we look at the way the bar, and the way in which the car works, right? So you could say, for example, you could look at this and you could see the blue line would represent the soul body that I think is called the Khat. Is it called the Khat in ancient Egyptian law? I must check that. Is that word right? Feels like I made an issue there, error there.
So the
Then, sorry, the
arc.
arc. Sorry, that's right. Thank you. The arc. So the arc body represents the spiritual part of us that goes from body to body. Yeah. And then you've got the bar and you've got the car. The car represents our vital etheric substance, which is related to our thinking wheels. And the bar is related to the inner spiritual, emotional substances, which is like closer to the core of our identity, right? Because we identify as emotional beings. Though we have these hamster wheels running through our heads that we like, they're trying to make us identify with the thoughts and ideas running through our heads, which isn't really who we are. But the emotional nature is really what we become. And that's really where those hamster wheel thoughts come from. But the emotional nature can be programmed by the hamster wheel thoughts because they work in. And here you can see the yang yin nature of these two principles. So you could see here as the number 2 represents the moon, the lunar potential. And the moon obviously relates to our emotional energies, right? And that emotional expression of energy, which is so fundamental to our being, and is in opposition with 1 and 3, Jupiter, but is running continuity as a balance between 1 and 3, Jupiter. And then on the other side, the car body, because this is the bar body, the green. So think of the green as the bar, and think of the yellow here as the car, which is focused on Saturn. And Saturn is that logos, logical thought, the thinking mechanisms, which are in opposition and balance with obviously the 9 and the 7. The 7 representing the south node, which is where we're coming from, right? And the 9 representing that transformative potential of what becomes the future from the past. So that's that 9 on the enneagram, which is that part that wraps back into negative space, if I can consider a concept without a number. But here we've got this idea of the bar body and the car body and the arc. And the arc in Sanskrit means eye, right? I bet you're going to have a field day with that, eh?
Sorry, my mic was muted. Yeah, I was just writing that down, the arc, because the eye is obviously the middle of the pyramid, and then you could view it as the vagus nerve as well, which travels between the brain and the heart. So the heart would be the ba, which is more of the feminine energy, and then the ka, the life force, is more of the fire. So that would be the 8, and obviously the 8 looks like that image you showed of the spine as well. And obviously the 8 split could be 2 3s as well. So you have the 8 and the 6 both being related to Saturn. Yeah, sorry. And the arc, it sounds a lot like Ankh as well, or like Anka or Anchor. And it's very important to be anchored while looking at stuff like this or whatever. You need certain points. So I find it very beneficial to have certain points of reference, and like an anchor point between the mind and the heart. So like I quite like to think of like a dragon energy, which is a the eagle and the snake combined, because the snake sheds its skin. Like, you have to let go of your emotions, and the snake is the feminine persona. You have to change your persona up sometimes as well. And then obviously the mind, you can't always be stuck in your mind. You have to travel between the both, like this, going up and down, ride the wave. The wave is both a light, a flame, and water as well. Sorry, your mic's muted. I just need to mention as well that the Ida, I swear that's a name, a Norse name for water or the sea. I've tried finding it, but I can't. But Ida is the water or the sea. I'm sure of it. You're still muted. I'm not sure if you need to be. Okay. While you're still muted, I'll just share this graph. I've had to do it back to front. So this is the 3, this is the 6, and that's the 9. I've taken the triangle from the middle of the Enneagram. The C is the 3, which is C patterns, or the pitter patter, fire, and the 6 is the F, or the frequency, or the mutter matter. That's the father and mother. And in the middle is the I, which is the number 9. So these two combined is the number 9, and this in the center is the plasma, or like the third eye, so to speak. And it's just very interesting that 9 in German means no. So, you need 3 eyes to know. But yeah, this is the pyramid, which is the Paya Amid, which means fire in the middle. You can see this on the dollar bill, the eye at the top and the pyramid. And it's the empire, basically, the electromagnetic fire, which goes straight up the middle, and then the third eye creates or brings things into being. And while we're divided on the left and right by many things, the powers that be, or Illuminati, whatever, they carve out the world how they want to, basically, while we're just divided. But yeah, pitter patter, mutter matter. One's the father, the other the mother.
Finally, I wasn't able to shift between my Google tabs. I don't know why that happened. Very strange. Not able. It accidentally disconnected the tab. Sorry about that. But yeah, I like the picture you were sharing. I was having a little bit of an issue trying to get it to come back. It's very interesting what you were talking about. I'm sorry I couldn't really interact. There's a lot to unpack here when we look at that. You mentioned the triangle of the enneagram, and that's something which is quite close to my heart. Now, I use the Chaldean traditional enneagram, the one from Chaldea, and I don't use the new one that was created by in the 60s. Well, no, the shape of the enneagram. This is interesting, but people don't know this. That new enneagram that has taken the world by storm, right? It never existed before 1920. Did you know that?
I wasn't aware there were different
Yeah,
enneagrams.
they sell it as if it's some old thing, but that is not actually a true enneagram. It shouldn't be called an enneagram because it's not. And if you look at a pentagram, you can turn it around and it's the same. Turn it around, it's the same. You look at a hexagram, turn around, the same. Septagram, turn around, the same. The whole word agram means you can turn it, and it means it's got an aesthetic quality of continuity. So anyway, now here's the interesting thing. Ikazo, he claimed that he got his knowledge from Chaldean Enneagram, right? That's what he claims. But then he didn't use the Chaldean Enneagram. He went and he took this shape that had been called an Enneagram by what's his name? Self-remembering guy. What's his name? Georgiev, right? The Georgiev guy. And he used that Georgiev guy's shape, who Georgiev had called an Enneagram. He had basically invented it out of the blue. But he didn't use the Chaldean, and he didn't use the Chaldean knowledge about the Enneagram. There are very particular meanings to each of the numbers. And the Chaldean Enneagram is in alignment with numerology. So the New Age Enneagram is creating a new form of numerology that is different to the Enneagram numerology from Chaldea, which comes from Phoenicia, which comes from ancient land of Chem. And so it's very interesting, but I'll show you here. This might be quite interesting to look at, because when we start to really look into the Enneagram story, there's this 3 times 3 that becomes 3 times 3 that becomes 3 times 3. And it's sort of like a pattern of that profound information around the 3 scaling up. And it's a fundamental Kabbalistic bit of Kabbalistic law that sort of puts everything into perspective rather well. Is this the one? Let's hope I've got the complete picture here. I think I have. If I've chosen the wrong one, then I'll sure. So this is the Enneagram that comes from Chaldea. This is the traditional one, the old one, and so this is obviously based upon the Chaldean numerology, like the way they presented the Enneagram before it was reinvented. And you'll notice here, look at this particular triangle. So here you've got 9, 6, 9, 3, and 6. 3, 6, 9, right? On this particular triangle. Then on this triangle, you've got 4, 8, 2, right? Sorry, 5, 8, 2, right? Which adds up to 15, right? 2 plus 5 is 7, plus 8 is 15, which adds up to 6. 9 plus 3 is 12, plus 6, which adds up to 9. Let's look at the next triangle, the next Enneagram. 7 plus 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12, which adds up to 3. So can you see that each one of these blue triangles represents 3, 6, 9? And on the original triangle, it's 3, 6, 9. On the one that represents 9. So they're showing us here with the numbers and the relationships. And so we see this relationship here between, for example, the moon and Mercury. And we see the relationship here between Saturn and the moon. You see, that's why that relationship is such a key point. But when we look at this three coming into one, we can see this as well when we look at the Om. So let me get an Om here for you. That might be quite interesting to, the same knowledge is encoded into the Vedic cosmology. And so then we basically get a very sort of, what happened? My image dropped off. Okay. That's when I had that problem with, I think it was an issue with StreamYard. They do this sometimes. They keep dropping things, and they dropped my my image. So there we go. So there's an Alm. I hope you can see my marker. And so the way it's drawn, it's stylized, is different, right? But this would be traditionally blue that I'm outlining. Now the blue would traditionally be, it's a golden phi ratio that would be reflected, right? effectively. 1 and 2 and 3, right? So remember that. 1 and 2 and 3. So that is phi. It should be phi, and the ratios of the sizes would traditionally be in alignment with that. Then we've got this should traditionally be blue, which is these three principles of phi coming together in 1, 2, 3. Then this would traditionally be yellow, a crescent. And then this little dot on the top, which isn't really a square, it would just normally be a dot, would be red, making 1, 2, and 3. So you can see there that within the decoding here, we've got the same principle of the 1, the 2, and the 3. And as we look at that, we see that that is also in alignment with these triangles that we see here. The one triangle, which is 3, 6, 9, that adds up to 9. The other triangle, which is 2, 5, 8, that adds up to 6. And the other triangle, which is 7, 1, and 4, which adds up to 3, making it 3, 6, 9 of the triangles that relate to the original triangle of 3. So you've got the ohm here. This one represents the blue ohm, the 3, the 6, and the 9 in its structure. Then that structure repeats itself with the other two triangles, which is what we see happening in the ohm here as well. We see the same thing happening here, right, with these three principles. And then we see the same thing happening here with the ohm. Now there's one third layer of this. There's yet a third layer of this to be considered, right? And that third layer is the ohm, the tat, and the sat. Now with this enneagram, you can see you've got the blue enneagram structure and you've got the orange enneagram structure, right? And you've got the circle combining the orange enneagram structure. Now we talk about the Om, Tat, and Sat in Vedic cosmology, of which this Om image that we were looking at is one of the three that contains within it 3, and the Om contains within it 3. Can you see there's 3, 6, 9 being expressed between the Om, between the blue part of the Om and the 3 parts of the Om, and then how Om Tat Sat becomes an expression of this. So you got the 3, 6, 9 in one triangle, then you got the triangle of 9, the triangle of 6, and the triangle of 3, and then you've got the blue triangle, you got the orange triangle, and you got the circle combining these triangles. So you got the Om, Tat, and Sat, where the Om you could consider as being the circle of manifestation, and the Tat and the Sat become these more subtle reflections of these relationships. The Sat being obviously relating to Saturn, relating to these 3 triangles, right? And the Tat relating to that information field that connects these to manifestational reality. So you see how the Enneagram becomes a decoding part where there's 3, 6, 9 coded into 3, 6, 9, coded into 3, 6, 9. Isn't that really interesting? And when you add that up, right, 3 plus 6 plus 9 is 18, plus 18 is 36, plus 18 becomes 54. Yeah? And so it's just very interesting when you watch how these numbers relate. Now, 54 would be a mystic number of 55 because 54 becomes 55. So this is why in the tarot trumps, the first tarot trump is not numbered. The second tarot trump is number 1, but its Hebrew counterpart number is 2. The third tarot trump's Hebrew counterpart number is 4, and so forth, because it's an actualizing number and it's a mystic number. The tarot reflects mystic numbers. That's why Aleph isn't numbered, because Aleph represents that mystic transcendence that goes through the whole process and fills the entire substance. So we can see how this octaves of being of 3 within 3 within 3, and this is what I think Tesla was on about the 369 and how important these 369 elements are. And so we come back to that fundamental Saturn square, wherever you look at it, right? The Saturn square so beautifully reflects this. And here's where it gets interesting, right? So when you say 7 plus 8 plus 9, right? When you say 2 plus 3 plus 1, so that's obviously 6, right? Then you say 4 plus 5, which is 9, 15, that's 6, right? And then you say 7 plus 8, which is 15, plus 9, which is 24, which is 6. When you're looking, oh, I'm so sorry, people. I didn't give you the Saturn square. I thought I was here. So here you can see you've got, I'll do it one more time. You got 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6. You got 4 plus 5 plus 6, which breaks down to 15, 6. Here you've got 7 plus 8 plus 9, which is 24, which is 6. So this represents 6, 6, 6. So I thought that that's very interesting to take a look at how all these numbers refract, and we can see the same thing happening here. I mean, when we look at the Saturn square, it gets more interesting, right? Because everything comes back down to, if you add all of these numbers together, you end up with 55. Sorry, you end up with 45, right? You end up with 45 if you add all of these numbers together. And when you add that to 10, its culmination, where 1 becomes its new cycle, you end up with 55. So, there's a lot of really interesting anomalies there. But I just thought to add that to what you were saying about, this notion of these threes. I think you could speak forever and forever contemplate the notion of 3, the Trinity. So this brings us back to the beginning, the Trinity, yeah? The triple goddess. What are your thoughts when you look at the feminine version of this, the triple goddess, as relating to birth process?
What do you mean? I don't really know much about the triple goddess. What, the maiden mother, the crone? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know too much about other than I think it's Hecate is the main one that resembles those 3, I guess. But I just want to quickly say that with the tree of the Trinity, it's like you have the A, B, C, or 1, 2, C. Like you need the 3 to be able to see. Like you have the triangle with your third eye. You need 3 eyes to truly see. You have these 2, but then you need your third eye to be in the middle. It's very important to be in the middle with stuff. So the 3 is key to see. Yeah, I'd love to hear about the triple goddess. Not really something I've looked into.
Well, looking at the triple goddess, I would say, like, to bring it into accessible ideas. I mean, it's also quite a profound notion, but obviously, as you say, you've got the young maiden, which represents a womb that isn't ripe and ready yet. Yeah. Then you have the but ripening womb. Then you have the queen. I like to call her the queen. So the princess, the queen, and the crone, for example. And now we're talking about the ripeness and the fullness of pregnancy, representing the creative potential to bring forth new life. And then the crone represents all of the knowledge necessary to bring life into being, but is that old age of passing out of the world. So there's this passage of these three elements which relates to the past, the future, and the present. The queen represents the present now as being pregnant and possible to change the past and the future now through actions. The past represents the maiden. She doesn't have the potential to change the past. She doesn't have the potential to change anything specifically. She's developing that potential. But there's an innocence that's being expressed. She represents innocence. She represents purity, where the mother represents life and the fullness and the bounty and the potential of life. The crone represents wisdom. So we've got these three sort of elemental attributions, which you could say relate to, in the same way, the prince, right? The king, and the sage. So in our masculine architecture, the sage represents the crone. So the crone is the female sage version, right? That's why I say wisdom. And the king is the masculine. This is the one who's in charge and can actually make things happen, do things. And the prince doesn't have the power to do anything, right? Because he does what his dad says, basically. But he's dad's right hand man, and he also represents the purity, in a sense, of naivety, where naive is quite pure and quite, that optimistic, seeing the best and the positive in things. So these three principles are also embodying, these notions here that we're looking at, because we look at this and we see like this fundamental pulling in two different directions, which is really interesting, So the potential here is 4, 5, and 6. So 4, 5, and 6 becomes the potential. 6 being Venus, representing life and abundance. 5 being the potential for communication and transmission, and also represents having both possibilities. The frog having both the masculine and feminine possibilities locked in. And then 4 represents the law and order, you could say. So the law and order, which also represents the North Node, for example, Uranus, for example, the lawgiver, the knowledge. And these then represents, Saturn is on the pole of the crone and represents the wisdom and the sage and the old age, right? And the moon is on the pole of the queen and represents that womb ready to receive and produce life. So we can see the same idea being expressed here as a, trinitarial. Did I just make that word up? Trinitarial. It's quite funny. A trinitarial expression of being in terms of the future, the past, and the present, as seen through the eyes of the man and the woman, respectively. And here's an interesting point, we tend to obsess on for one sexual thing, right? So men, we will obsess over the woman. Yeah. We will see the divine beauty and the divine feminine. Women see the divine masculine. And I was talking to a client of mine the other day who wanted some arcane knowledge, particular mantras that she needed, and she was having particular issues. And she has quite a lot of experience of working, and she comes from India. And so I was sharing with her certain mantras, and she was saying, well, should I go to an astrologer? And I said to her, well, here's the problem. Most astrologers are men, and this perspective thing twists it. So there are many mantras in India that women shouldn't chant, right? According to that perspective. But actually, women should be going for darshan with Shiva. Men should be going for darshan with the divine feminine. Men should be worshipping Kali. and Shakti. We find that not that we can't worship Shiva, but we find our animus in Mahesh's wife, in Parvati, in Shakti, in Kali. And here we got Parvati, Shakti, Kali. Here we have the triple goddess again, refracted back. This is the Vedic version of what we were talking about, of the crone. So obviously Mahakali represents the crone, right? And she dances the universe out of existence, destruction. That's the garland with all the skulls, right? Dancing on top of Shiva. And Shakti represents in her form, Durga, or many forms of her, represents the richness and the potential of the divine feminine. And then Parvati represents the journey towards becoming whole and fulfilled. So it's like an interesting, concept of different ways of looking at this divine story. Parvati represents the purity of purpose required to embark upon spiritual practice and sadhana, where Shakti represents the powers that you gain when you've done that. And the Mahakali represents the wisdom that you gain after not using those powers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that all makes perfect sense. Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking there, I was like, Kali is so the feminine, and she's known as like the destruction or the chaos. But like the feminine is always associated with the dark, or like the abyss, or the unseen, subconscious, or negative, and the masculine is the positive. And I find it very, very interesting how these feminine archetypes are always associated with chaos and destruction, and the masculine is just like law and order. I mean, I haven't looked into these gods too much, but I'm just very hesitant to sort of take people's words for things, that these energies are really like bad. Like Kali is the goddess of destruction and stuff, and then that's bad. Like, I know that might not be what it is, but on the surface level, without looking into it, it's like, oh, Kali is a destructive force, but really it's the creation, because to create you need to destroy, and that lives a purpose. It's like Eve biting the apple, and it's where we get the word evil from, probably, and she's another feminine archetype, which seems bad, but really he had to shed her skin, because afterwards they ate the fruit, they were naked, which just means that they weren't attached to the material. They released their chains, their shackles of their minds, and you can see that's a destructive force, because it's better to be contained. Yeah, I've just got this thing. There's this huge suppression of the feminine, like this water and this demonization of these goddesses and stuff. And yeah, so that's why I mentioned that, because Kali might not be seen as a destructive, but on the surface level she is, because I've only seen the surface level, and just intuitively I know that the destructive force is the creative force, really. Like the chaos is the potential, whatever.
Yeah, man, you bring up a really interesting point there. And, once again, like, this is probably one of the best glyphs other than the enneagram. I mean, this is an enneagram, but it's so simple to see it. So here we've got the three personalities of deity, you could say. And we've got as we said, we've got the Shakti, we've got the Parvati, I'm sorry, we got the Shakti, the blue. We got the Shakti, the green. No, sorry, I was getting myself tongue tied here. You got the Shakti, the blue. You got the Parvati, and you got the Kali, right? As the orange and the green. And the Kali resonates sitting on the node of Shani on Saturn here. And so that idea of destruction, I think it's important to recognize that we're looking at the emotional plane when we're looking at the divine feminine. So there's a reason why they've done this, right? And this is going to be so worthwhile for anybody out there listening. Namaste, Valence. I hope you are good. I hope you are having an absolutely awesome day. So, when we look at the nature of emotional conditioning, you could say that Parvati, or the maiden, represents the creation of new habits, right? So look at many of the ideas, the Statue of Liberty, right? Is that a maiden? Would you say? Who's carrying the torch? Which is quite an interesting concept, that purity and inspiration. And that represents Parvati. So this is pushed on us by those that wish to control us, right? And then you could say, so that relates to on a fairly profound level to that aspect of creating new emotional tones within ourselves. Then giving power to those emotional tones so that they can grow and become embodied represents the queen, right? And so we aren't discouraged from worshiping the queen, because that enforces potentially our programming. But we are discouraged from worshiping the crone, because the crone dissolves the conditioning. So if you're worshiping Kali, I'll give you an example of how you could practically use the Mahakali in your daily life. Let's say you're addicted to cigarette smoking. And this is an emotional pattern that started off with Parvati, or the maiden, and became pregnant in the queen, or Shakti, and now is so crystallized in your that it's breeding within you. It's breeding new addictions, right? Become pregnant and potent with this form. Namaste, chump. Sorry, is it plump? Clump. I hope you're good. I hope you're having an absolutely awesome day. Big love to you. Sorry, my eyes are getting misty over here. I've got a lot of frankincense and storax and all of my resins that I've been burning.
Helps
I love
for
them. I can't...
makes sense.
Yeah. So looking at this Mahakali, there's a reason why they don't want us to worship the crone, because by worshiping at the shrine of Kali and doing Kali rituals and practicing a Kali way in our life, we will dissolve all the addictions that are harmful. Addictions to sugar, addictions to television, addictions to smoking and drinking alcohol and drugs and pharmaceuticals. Kali, right? Kalia, in Vedic, we speak about Kalia. Kalia means empty. To be Kalia means empty. I think the word clear, Kalia, clear, might have some kind of a linguistic association back in time. So Kalia, clear, is to clear away all the debris of the emotional world. And so this is what the sage does. The sage clears away the ignorance of the mind completely, that we become wise. And the prince learns new ideas and new belief systems, and the king implements those belief systems. Okay, so now I judge you because of this, because I believe that, and this is how I think. No, you're good, you're bad. I judge that, I judge this. That constant judgment, that's the king. But then the wisdom comes as the sage and goes, well, who am I to judge? I don't know anything. All knowledge is just transcendent, and it's all just changing all the time. So how can I judge anybody? And so that's the sagely consciousness. And the feminine, that's happening on the emotional plane. Now, they don't want us to break their programming, because they spend a lot of time, energy, and money programming us through the media, programming us through neuro-linguistic programming, through the food that we eat, through the light that we get. And the moment you start worshiping the crone, you break their programming. How's that for an interesting concept? Why that particular aspect of the deity? This is my belief. Why I think, and I'd love for you to. I'd love to get your input. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah. So the crone would be the top of the pyramid. Is that what you're saying? If it's a triangle we're talking about. So yeah, that would be the middle path, the one that looks at both sides, and they don't want us to be in the center at all. They're doing everything they can to pull us away from our center and disorientate us. As the pendulum swings this way and that way, it's really important to just stay in the center and not go with it, so to speak. But yeah, there's many ways that they're disrupting our emotions, like via magnetism, like EMFs is a big one. But yeah, that's very interesting about the Kali and the crone. See, that's why California is called California, because Kali formula. It seems there's a lot of that chaotic energy there. But yeah, they certainly don't want us to be wise. They don't want us to have balanced of knowledge and intuition. And this comes back to dragons. There's dragon energy available in the world, which is the plasma, which is like this like light in water, like the stars as above, like our DNA, so below. And they don't want us to ignite the flame. That's the plasma. It's not just a masculine, it's a plasma flame. And then you have to be balanced of both the masculine and feminine. This is why there's so many hormone disruptors in our water, in food. This is why soya milk is free here in the UK. If you want a coffee, you've got to pay extra if you want oat milk. Any little things they're doing, they're trying to disrupt us, disorientate us spiritually, kind of cut the tie between the mind and the body or the heart, so you can't sort of communicate through both, because obviously this information comes down into the mind, but it needs to, I think the reverse osmosis happens in the row of the Cairo, happens in the heart. You need to like feel, and like it's a vortex, right? You need to sort of like spin all of the ideas and stuff round you, like round your body through your blood via consciousness, and get rid of any of the toxins or the heavy metals or the heaviness of the information that comes down through your mind and into your heart. But they want to sever that so it comes just into your mind, so you're walking around with a big heavy cup all the time, or you just don't have anything in your cup and you're mentally dehydrated, because most people seem to be both. Either have a cup that's too full and they don't want to know, they think, yeah, I know all there is to know, just chat GBT, or they're walking around like dehydrated mentally, just taking anything anyone will tell them, like, oh yeah, okay, is it, yeah, sure, all right, not having a conversation between them. And I mentioned the dragon energy because I said earlier it's the balance of the mind and the heart, or the masculine mind and the feminine heart, or the eagle and the snake, which is very important, because you need foresight of your mind, or the ego or the eagle up here, to see what's in the future, like the head to heed what's going on, And then you also need to be able to shed your skin like a snake. Also, you need to change things up. You need to let go of things as you grow. And then, of course, dragons breathe fire as well, and dragons are wise. And the powers that be are trying to tap into this dragon energy. And that's why they've demonized them. Said that dragons lurk in caves, well, the innermost cave, surely, and they hoard gold, whereas they actually protect gold. And I think that dragons protect this realm from outside forces, but they've been demonized, and I think they've tried to cast the dragons away. And in Genesis, the snake was cursed to crawl on its belly. I think the snake in Genesis was a dragon, and I think it was speaking wisdom, and that its wings were clipped so it would become a snake. And now whenever anyone talks about Lucifer, they mention the snake. No one talks about the dragon energy, and I think that's really important because that's our potential. That's what we are.
Yeah, I think that dragon idea is very interesting. Speaking about these principles, the Tao also has it. So you got your yang and you got your yin. So your masculine principle is hot, and it's pouring out, and the cool contractive feminine is absorbing. And the interesting thing is this masculine principle arises from a cold principle of the man's jing being cold and the woman's jing being hot. So there's like this inversion that happens in the physical organs as to the principles. So the abstract is one thing, the physical is another. This is why I think there's so much confusion about the masculine and feminine. People thinking that the masculine is one and the feminine is another. They're both. Like, both the yin and the yang contain the yang within the yin, and the yin contains the, they're both back to front, but they're the same thing essentially. And speaking of dragons, whenever I hear the word dragon, I think of, on is the old word in Land of Chem for the sun. That's why we turn electricity on, right? Because it's on is electricity. And we haven't lost that today. So on is an old name of the sun, solar. And drag, the drags. So the sun
or draw, gone.
Draw.
So to draw
and drag
energy to sort of pull it in. Sorry.
No. Yeah, beautiful. That's what I was getting at. It's like it's got to do with, you got the solar energy and you got this drag on solar energy. So, okay, what happens? The solar energy acts like a powerful engine of capacitization on the Earth's crust. And the capacitizing of the Earth's crust produces a lot of energy, electrical. And that energy then gets dragged through drag-on lines, where the power of on, the sun, is being drag on through the earth, where there are gold minerals, especially gold. Because what's the most electrical mineral that there is? Well, gold. What do you use if you want to make a fine microchip with very clear electrical conductivity points? Gold, right? It's what you use. So it's the most powerful electrical conductive material that there is. It's just expensive and rare, so we don't use it for all of our electrics. But if we did, do you know what would happen if you used gold in all of your electrics? They would never break. What a thought, right? So if you were to make an electrical appliance using gold in the electrical wiring thing, because it doesn't degrade, you can run electricity through it. It doesn't degrade. It just stays. It stays what it is. It's a non-tarnishable. It's a non, it's a noble metal. So silver is also highly, but gold is so. So the idea of gold and silver and the dragons has got to do with that powerful electrical potential, and then of course water as well, being having that polarizing potential, so that diamagnetic and dielectric principles can operate. Water has this powerful effect. So where you've got gold and metals and water and the electric on power coming from the sun produces certain lines that run through the earth. We call them ley lines, drag on lines. They're dragging the power of the sun through the earth. It's a nice way of thinking about it. And that's why dragons have a tail. That's why they breathe fire, because what does electricity do? Produces heat. So electrical current, when you concentrate it, it produces heat, produces fire. It's like how light bulbs work, right? Because it's like if you had enough electricity running through a whole light bulb, it's going to actually start a fire. But we just control the amount of electricity so that it's a small amount of discharge of heat that produces light. So it's very interesting when we look at the science behind like what dragon represents. I think it's like understanding the physics of electricity in ancient times, which is also the energy in our cells, because our cells have got an electric charge, and we need the sun's power. We need to eat sugar, and sugar is so sugar is when the drag-on lines push plants. Namaste, Stacy. I hope you're well. I hope you're having a good day. Namaste to everybody. Hope you guys are enjoying. So the cells in the plant are interacting with the dragon energy, and the water is being pushed up and it's being sucked in to the cells, and that brings minerals, and those minerals produce the necessary electrical conductivity within the organic matter, so that the plant can suck the electricity out of the light of the sun and transmute the light into crystals. It crystallizes the light into sugar. And so then we need to eat the sugar, which is electrical potential of the sun that's being crystallized, so that we can release that electrical potential into our bodies that can become power to generate metabolism in our bodies. So we need to eat sugars. That's why we have to eat sugars. Without that, there can be no power of the sun. So we are all solar powered beings. And isn't it beautiful with the serpent? The serpent is the most obvious solar powered being, because they literally, what do they need less of than us? They need less sugars than us. We need to eat more sugars than a serpent, because the serpent's highly efficient. Why does a serpent only have to eat once every 2 or 3 weeks to be like considered eating well? Yeah, because they don't need sugars. They actually pull the electricity out of the sun directly to heat up their bodies, where we use the electricity stored in sugars from sun to heat up our bodies through a metabolic reaction. They just directly pull the dragon power directly out of the sun. So this is that association with serpents and dragon serpent power, I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned the light of the sun coming down into the earth and then coming out into like ley lines. So ley lines go like the rivers are like veins of the earth, I guess. And the earth is an anagram of heart. So then you have the light coming down from above, coming into us, going into our heart, being pumped around our body, like the veins or our ley lines, I guess. And the dragon energy is what gives us charge. And yeah. Also, we're soul powered beings as well as soul powered beings. That is the key. And our soul is our potential, and our potential to become dragons. That's what I reckon. That's why I believe, like, past few years there were so many people dying of heart attacks, not because of the poke, but because of because of this people not having enough dragon energy, because of this magnetism, these EMFs messing with our circuitry. That's why I think there were lots of sudden deaths, not because of the poke. Could be as well, but I'm just sitting with this information. I think that this dragon energy is what flows through us, and I think that is the plasma, like this charge, and that's what gives us our life force, really.
Yeah, I think that's really on point. And also the interesting point of the propaganda, right? You know, like you can charge that light energy with character, with thought. It responds to thoughts. So we can charge our bioelectric field with how we think. Think positive, think negative, see how it affects your health. You know, be happy, be sad, see the different effects on immune system, for example. But like you're saying, that is really on point. And there was something else I wanted to mention about something you were just talking about. Let's hope my brain can get back on that point. We've got the dragon power flowing through us, you know. I think as well that this is something that we probably don't really concentrate on enough, is plasma, right? Like, what is this plasma? What is this blood? Yeah, because you got red blood cells and white blood cells, and the red blood cells have got these plates. They do this. They rub against each other and they generate electric charge. Not cool, eh? And so when you've got a low red plasma count, that means there's less electric charge being generated to go into your cells. And once your cells get to a certain low point of electric charge, what happens is that nature is so intelligent. There are beings that are out there that are attracted to that low electric charge because they can siphon off of it. And these beings then congregate on you. When a plant is got a low electric charge, then it's going to attract all the pests. The plant next to it that's got a high electric charge, pests won't go near it. They'll go onto the plant with a low electric charge because it's easier to get the energy out of that plant than to fight the plant with a high electric charge, because it's going to hold on to its energy. But the plant with a low electric charge can't hold on to its energy, and those little things, those little beings can siphon off that energy more quickly. And it's all solar energy. Everything is solar energy. So this is why the word soul and soul literally comes from Greek, which means the sun. So when we're speaking about our soul, we're literally using an ancient Greek word which means sun, which is really interesting. And so the soul manifests through the power of light, through the power of sunlight. Through the sun's potential manifests the soul into flesh. And the soul connection into the flesh is maintained by a high electric surge, high electric potential. So anything that diminishes, this is why eating shilajit is so good for your health, right? Because what's the story behind shilajit? It's like 159 minerals. Okay. Well, what do you put into a cell or a battery? It's a careful cocktail of minerals, and those minerals react and produce electricity. And that gives you a healthy red blood plasma. That red blood plasma gives you the electrical potential and energy. That's why the white blood cells are able to go out and target these scavengers that come in to take your energy. So the more empowered your red blood plasma is, the more electrical potential the white blood plasma will be. And they're like little magnets. There's a thing, I'm magnetized to that. Got it. Now, it's like the more electrical potential you have is like adding range to your gun, right? This gun can shoot 100 feet. This gun can shoot 200 feet. This gun can shoot 500 feet. So if you can shoot 500 feet because of a high electric charge, then the white blood cell can go a long distance to get hold of that little foreign body and grab it and take it out of the body. And so it's much more efficient. So It's not just about your white blood cell count, but it's about how much power each of the white blood cells have. It's like, no, it doesn't matter whether you got 10,000 warriors or 2,000 warriors. If the 2,000 warriors are armed with submachine guns and your 10,000 warriors are armed with bows and arrows, right? like, it doesn't matter if you got 20,000 warriors armed with bows and arrows. If you've got well-trained 2,000 warriors armed with bazookas and submachine guns and sniper rifles, that's the end of the story, right? 2,000 will take 20,000 like that. And so these quantification ideas that we have about health and is like, we're not looking at the big picture. And so the red and the blood cells, we have to come back here again, don't we? We have to. You see, pulling in two different directions, the red and the white.
Can I just ask why those colors? Why orange, green, and blue? Is that for a reason?
I didn't construct this. I just took this off the web.
Because those colors don't make sense to me. Because I would have red, blue, and purple, like the purple through the middle, and then the red, the masculine, and then blue.
Yeah, I don't particularly agree with the colors myself.
Right, that's what threw me off at first.
I would probably have it red, blue, and yellow. It's probably what I would do. Yeah, maybe.
Why yellow?
The only reason I would do that is because it represents the three primary colors, the three fundamental states. And but yellow and violet are complementary colors. So then you could argue that the yellow and the violet will be bouncing off each other. The red and the green will be bouncing off each other, right? And the blue and the orange will be bouncing off each other. So you've got the blue and the orange bouncing, the red and the green bouncing, the yellow and the violet bouncing, and the only color that isn't in there is indigo. And that indigo then becomes the vibration, Venus. I see Venus through the old scale, like Sumerian. The color indigo was associated with Venus in ancient times. And to me, it just makes so much more sense because it contains, what does indigo contain? It contains red and blue, right? But it contains blue plus red plus blue, in a sense. So if you take blue and add red to it, you get purple, violet. And then if you add blue to it again, you get indigo as a color. So it's blue, red, blue, coming from and going back to the divine feminine. And so that Venetian potential of so Venus and the sun are very closely associated in that regard when it comes to the forces of life, because we think of Venus, Lakshmi, as being good luck, right? Good luck, good health, good abundance, ripeness. Venus blesses the womb of your wife, you're going to have lots of kids. Beautiful children, beautiful wife, Venus, lots of wonderful lovemaking and like good food. And, Taurus represents this in its like feminine pole of Venus. And Libra represents the temperance of that, right? Justice. So the justice required to manage that Hierophant. So Hierophant is related to Venus in the tarot, which is quite interesting. And that's like bringing that law of life, life's laws to us, to be in alignment with the laws of life, so that we don't contradict the laws of life. It's supposed to be what the priest represents. But yeah, I mean, the colors, there are probably a lot of different ways that you could associate the colors, as long as they are associating these three principles, I think. We've gone over the 2-hour mark. Shall we wrap it up, or what are your last thoughts, the
I
last
just want to
ideas you'd like
quickly
to?
say, have you heard of
Don't rush.
Okay.
Take your time.
Dicinian glasses, or like Dicinian dye. It's a deep purple, I believe. And Dicinian glasses allow you to see people's auras, apparently. So I think they're like an indigo color, very deep blue or like dark purple. But anyway, I find that interesting because you're mentioning the indigo, and indigo's the third eye chakra, which we need to see the unseen, like to see, like it's our mind's eye, like to see symbols and stuff, or like to see beyond stuff, basically, to see into the vast ocean, which is the sea. But yeah, Dicinium glasses are a dark purple. And also, before we go, could you share a picture of Enki, the water bearer, because it looks exactly like the star card, and there is a reason for this. It's because I believe the age of Aquarius is more of like a kind of the Enki energy, like fresh water coming in, like an ancient intelligence, not artificial, which is trying to counter it. And I think that it's important that people are aware of these old gods or guardians of dimensions, because water is just like a dimension, or the teachings of these people or whatever, or what they brought, just opens doors in your minds. Yeah, to me that looks like the star card. Very similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's Aquarius, and obviously Enki is a Capricorn. It's the goat head and the fish body, which is Saturn, ruled by Saturn, and it's also Aquarius, which is the water bearer. So I think what I feel is that the powers that be are using this Saturnian energy, or this Enki energy, which is, I view Enki as balance of knowledge and intuition. He's the god of fresh water, which is fresh information, god of wisdom, isn't he? He'd be associated with Ahura Mazda. But what the powers that be are they're trying to birth a new god. They're trying to suppress this wisdom, trying to suppress this water, heat this water up with this fire, with this very masculine, dominating energy. I think it's really important that people start connecting more to water, and yeah, that's it. So basically, my point is that Aquarius has the potential to be an air sign, and it's an air sign, but it's the water bearer. So it can be a balance of the mind and the water, which is intuition, the snake and the eagle, which is a dragon energy. And I view Enki as a dragon. And Enki was Lucifer. Enki may have been Prometheus, and he was cast out of our minds, cast out of heaven, and he had his wings clipped. So now people view him as a snake, and the snake is being demonized, and the snake is feminine, and the snake is wisdom, is cunning, is intuition, most importantly. And this all matters. It matters so much that this trickle down effect on how these myths echo through time, because everything that's happened before and is happening in the future is happening now. I view these sort of mythical stories all playing out now. And we can get into that next time. But how my point, another point quickly, is that Atlantis was possibly a worldwide civilization. that became the Celtic people, who are known as the Irish. Everyone seems to have Irish blood in them. It's not Irish blood, it's Celtic, it's Atlantean blood. There's still many, many descendants of Atlantis. And I think that Enki, or his bloodline, or his archetype, more importantly, was responsible for Atlantis or Tartaria, or these old world buildings, because these buildings were connected to the earth and there was fast flowing water under these cathedrals, so that they could be harness energy from the ether. So these old civilizations were connected to the earth and the water, which is the feminine. And right now, they're trying to get us more connected to this air energy. Like that's why I have wind turbines everywhere. That's why we have AI. And like I said earlier, if we were balanced, AI would be beneficial. But what happened with Atlantis, I think, I'm just spitballing here, is that they were peaceful. Somebody pulled energy from Mars or possibly the Nephilim, and this is I think that Mars may have had life on it, and it became dried up. They sucked all the water, all the feminine energy out of it, and then this mind virus came down here, and then caused devastation. But it's playing out right now. Elon Musk is trying to pull the energy of Mars here. We're not going to Mars. He wants Earth to become Mars. He wants to dry out all of this water, all of this information, all of our ancient intelligence and our memory. And the reason I think this is because you have the smart dust they want to spray in the sky soon. You have Moderna who want to, with Aria here in the UK, they want to program plants via smart dust. But what's to stop them programming us? These are called MEMS. So they want to implant false memories into our DNA. And this is further severing us from who we truly are. And yeah, I just think it's important I say this now, that this sort of AI masculine energy mind virus is trying to suppress the feminine, the wisdom, the intuition, the waters. And I think it's really important that gods like Enki or gods of water are looked into, and we start respecting water more. We start tuning into it, because as far as I'm concerned, water is one of many gods, but I see it as source. Like it is a guardian of dimensions, like a god. All of the water here on Earth apparently has always been here. Water doesn't die; it evaporates. You freeze it and it unfreezes. So I think we really need to start tuning into this water, which is a kind of feminine energy, so we can ride this wave that we're on at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely volley there, brother. Yeah, the whole story of Enki and Mars. That's probably a whole conversation to go into. The story from the Sumerian stories are about Alelu. And Alelu was on Mars. He was banished to Mars, and Mars was important. And so that's very interesting. Like there's associations that seem to suggest Alalu's face is that face that people saw on Mars that all the New Ages are debunking. We knew about the face on Mars for like decades, right? I knew about the face on Mars in the 80s. Then they debunked it about 15 years after the internet came into being. Don't you find that funny? Yeah? So there's definitely like a powerful, and there's a lot of these ideas, people that are pushing ideas that like these planets don't exist, right? And I think we don't understand what these planets are. I don't think we understand our own planet, right? Like we think of it as a ball of rock. It's not a ball of rock. This is a lot more. It's a living thing, like you say. And the water is like the blood of the earth, and it connects us to our soul, the sun, so that this life can flow through us, and that dragon power moves through the water, the Shen. So it's like it's such a key element, and that whole thing with these globalists, they know stuff, right? They've done a bit of homework. They wouldn't be in charge if they were ignorant. They're not in charge because they're stupid. They're not in charge because they're ignorant. They're not in charge because they're misled. They're in charge because they're greedy. They want it all for themselves, all the knowledge, all the power, all the control, everything. And that's like the problem, greed, but they do know stuff. Like to give everybody goes on about the Masons, but the one thing about the Masons is they know stuff. We can't say they don't know stuff. So there's definitely an association with Mars. My gut says that there's old civilized remnants on Mars that haven't been dismantled. How's that? Because the story says that the 200 Grigori that came to Earth from the Sumerian story came from Mars, the Igigi. So they would have left all of their tools on Mars. But now on Earth, humans have been on Earth. So we've dismantled all the old technology, right? And used it, reappropriated it. But on Mars, there must be a lot of original stuff, access to technology, and that's probably what they're looking for on the etheric level. On the astral level, there's a heritage there. Maybe there's DNA there, right? Source code DNA. Maybe there's a lot more that we'll find on Mars that But thank you, dear brother.
I just want to say quickly that dinosaurs. Slicks mentioned this before as don't know source, and there's a clear cover up of dragons. Like the term dinosaur was invented in the 1800s or whatever, and also I don't. So that's messed up our timeline, and then space. I don't believe we can go up there onto these other planets. I think that we can tune into them and bring them here. I think that this is all there is. And I think it's a trick to think that we can go to other planets, like physically, if that makes sense. And I've heard as well that one of the 200 Nephilim, or Igigi, if they're the same, was called Grok. And obviously you have Elon Musk's AI is called Grok. So people are literally feeding this machine, and who came from Mars. But potentially, what I think is clearly we can't go up there physically. What I think is that this realm is a copy of the old realm. I think that all of these planets and stuff we maybe used to be able to go to physically, but now this is like a copy or a holographic replica of another realm, and the moon and Saturn do have a part to play in that. But I don't think we're going to go and physically go there. I don't think any aliens or Anunnaki are going to come physically into this realm. I think that it all comes through us, that we can sort of, like these gods aren't physical. They're ways of expressing archetypes or nature. But I don't believe we're going to physically go anywhere, even the moon. I don't think. But
I think that they've lied to us about all of that stuff. But it's interesting you say bringing Mars here, going there. To me, that's the same idea. You see, who's to say that there's not a Stargate translocation potential to relocate the body? If you can change, listen to this, the frequencies of Earth is XYZ. Let's say hypothetically the frequencies of Mars is ZYX. If you can change your surrounding frequencies to ZYX, guess where you exist? Well, you no longer exist on Earth, do you? So where do you exist? If the frequencies of ZYX is Mars and the frequency of XYZ is Earth, and you change your frequencies from XYZ to ZYX, you exist on Mars. Did you bring Mars here, or did you go to Mars? I think that the conventional idea of a little tin can made out of aluminium going through the all those bands of high frequency and high potential energy, right? Where the temperatures are as high as what? what is it, like 10,000 degrees? Like aluminium would have melted. Even the gold shielding wouldn't be able to keep the heat out. People would be cooked alive according to the ideas that they presented us, right? Going through these bands of the atmosphere. But I think what's happened is a lot of people, this is something I've noticed. People see a lie and they say, well, that's a lie, so it can't happen. So we just throw that out. Maybe we're throwing the baby out of the bathwater. Like the best lie that's told is the lie that contains the truth. Maybe the truth is we can go to Mars, but we can't go to the Mars in the conventional way that they're telling us we can go to Mars. Maybe there's a much more extra dimensional answer to what Mars is and how this connection exists between Earth and other spheres, which is an interesting concept. And so I noticed this as well. I'll give you another classic example of what I'm talking about, right? Just before we go. So I've seen Ronan, and bless Ronan, he's a great researcher. I've got a lot of love and a lot of time for Ronan. This brings out a lot of good information. But one of the things we've been disagreeing on lately is he believes that Egypt was in America, Phoenicia was in America, Africa was in America, China is actually America. So all of history, they've taken American history and they've put it there and told us it was China, and they put it there and told us that Phoenicia was China, was there. They've taken the map of what we know of Egypt, and they've taken certain artifacts and hidden it there to make us believe that that's Egypt or the land of Kem, and so forth for everywhere. And I understand how people can come out with that theory, which I don't agree with, because to me, it makes a lot more sense that there was an ancient culture that spanned the whole world, right? That we called the Kemian culture, the culture of Kem. And that this was a huge global culture, like they speak about in India, like they speak about in Atlantis, and the ancient Greeks speak about this ancient culture, like they speak about in Northern Africa and Egypt, like they speak about in Persia, right? Like they speak about in many places around the world, Sri Lanka. They've got these ideas of this global culture. They call it the Golden Age, where humans were highly evolved spiritually, highly evolved mentally. We had a great super culture that spanned the earth, and that super culture was in America, and it was in Africa, and it was in Asia, and it was so now
Atlantis,
we.
probably. Not America.
Sorry.
Not America, Atlantis. It's the worldwide civilization that some call it Tartaria, because you have all of these buildings all around the world, especially in America and England, which were built in the 1800s. Supposedly, they were not. They were built way before then. They were founded, and maybe it was this Atlantean empire, not America. But there certainly was when we were more connected. Like we've been divided left and right, whatever. Countries have been divided. I think when we were more connected to the earth, to nature, to water, to the mother, to the womb, we had a worldwide civilization and we lived in harmony. And I think that is Atlantis, not America.
Well, I think America was a part of Atlantis, and I think so was Europe. And so I think the whole world was, we were in an Atlantean. This is my point. So some people like Ronan will take it and go, no, well, it was all in America, because we're not imagining how many epochs there were. According to the Sumerian tablets, they speak about 150, 180,000 years of history. There's been kings' tablets found with numbers of kings and how long they reigned for. And no one takes these seriously because we're speaking hundreds of thousands of years, but there is actually hundreds of thousands of years of epochal history. We're looking at the last 8,000 years of epoch history, and we're trying to cram it all into that epoch instead of going, well, there's been many epochs. If you dig down in Turkey, you'll find one layer of civilized. Dig down, you'll find another layer. Then the more deeper you dig, the more layers of civilization you find, because this is how long we've been doing this.
It's
and
the
you
same
can find
story repeated, though. I think it's the same story, echoes every time, and it's happening now. It happened in Atlantis. This mind virus comes in, dehydrates us, and then moves on to the next one. The last one was Mars, and we're the next one. Maybe.
Absolutely. So the point I'm getting at here is that the idea that it's more complicated than just everything coming from one place, like America, which is an easy mistake to make. I think the other mistake, that you can't travel to Mars, is the same kind of mistake. Does that make sense? Because we're thinking about it through our narrow lens. We're not thinking about it through a much bigger lens of possibility and going, well, what if this is possible? What if that? You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just want to say we could go to Mars, but why would we want to? Because it's a dry wasteland. It makes much more sense that they want to turn this into a dry wasteland, because it seems to be that's what they're doing. And also there's waters above, and then there's waters below the Earth, as above, so below. And you need to get through water, because obviously water is a boundary, and it's related to the north of Saturn, the hexagram, and Saturn is boundaries. And I think to do that, to get through the water, we need to be connected to water and be one with it. But instead, they're sending up little cock rockets to try and penetrate the womb which we're in. They tell us that it's made of atoms, which is a tomb, rather than it being a womb, which has a W, which is water. Like, we're in a womb, not a tomb. Like, we're in a, like, everything's a wave. It's not little quantitative, little tiny parts. As we are collectively, we're not going to be able to leave this planet, go anywhere. First, we need to be in coherence with water to get past the boundary. So we may be able to go to different planets, but not as we are now, not in little cock rockets anyway.
Well, this is my point. That's my point. Like, I think that they really do have technology we don't know about, and that the pop rockets are a show to keep us talking nonsense about pop rockets, like tin cans. Like, it's like, it's like, um, you know, throwing stones, and like, we're going to throw a stone, we're going to knock that wall down, right? Actually, there's a guy with a bazooka around the corner. You can't see him. We're going to pretend that we're throwing stones. Look, we knocked the wall down. We didn't see the guy with the bazooka like 500 feet away launching the rocket, right? Because that's really how they knocked the wall down. We just see the stones being thrown, and we think, wow, these stones are quite powerful. They can knock a wall down. But
Yeah,
it's just lies.
we've been talking about space, and we've been talking about up there. Also, there's right here, as in beyond the ice wall, so to speak, beyond the fear, beyond this ice wall that's put up around us. I think that this realm is it's not round, it's not flat, it's just pure potentiality, and that's what they want. They want us divided on the, it's round and it's flat. They don't want us to see the potential that we are, that this earth is. There's vortex energy everywhere, and that's how we pull things in through other dimensions, by connecting to gods, which are guardians of dimensions. And I definitely believe that there's more earth here. There's, the heart can expand more, but that's here. They don't want us looking here. We were talking about that last night, weren't we? To hear, to be here. But I think they want us looking up, like further, like the Father. God is up there. God is right here, and it's the Holy Spirit in which we're in. It's the heart, and that is our central point, and that can expand. And yeah.
It's interesting because looking relates to Manipura chakra. The Manipura chakra is the gem. The Mani means gem, Pura means all, embracing, all touching. The gem that covers everything. Geometry, math, mart. Saturn, Manipura. And they don't want us to be here. Now, here relates to Visuddhi chakra. Visuddhi chakra is Akasha. So where we really are, what's really here is Akasha. But the frequencies that the Akasha are in tune with are what we call Earth. And we can shift these frequencies of reality to be different. And I think this is like something, and namaste to you guys. Namaste, Swag, and Siga and Magic. I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are having a great day. Big blessings. So that's like an interesting concept, you know. When we start to apply like what you're saying, people think in terms of atoms, and because people thinking in terms of atoms, they think that's not possible. So what they've got us doing is believing that we can't travel. But the truth is we can travel. We can travel within ourselves. We can travel through other dimensions. We've got this infinite scope of possibility, because what's really here is what we hear. This is what I saw when I drowned when I was a little boy, right? 3 years old, drown, out of the body, ordeal, pain, suffering, wah, wah, wah. And I noticed the only thing that exists is hearing. Like, it's the only thing there is sound, and it's this vibrating, and it's loud. It's all there is. And it's like, it's here. We're hearing it. And everything else is built over that, layers and layers and layers and layers. And then we define that with sight, right? So we look, and when you look, you lock in physical reality with your looking. Yeah. The act of looking locks in physical reality. And then we test it. We test the reality that we've locked in. We test it with our taste, right? And then we make that reality really small with our smell, right? So we turn that big, vast reality into a very small reality that we've tested with our taste, that we've locked in with our eyes. But actually, when we transcend those 3 elements, we can feel reality. And when we can feel reality, then reality fails as a construct, because we're failing reality, we're feeling reality. And when we fail, then we are truly in our hearing, here in the Visuddhi chakra, where all the psychic potential is. And that's where we are in the Akasha. And when we are here in the Akasha, we're existing in all different time. And when we recognize that we are here, we notice that what here is really made out of, right? And this gets really interesting, is light, which is thought, which is potential. And that potential of thought constructs is really what we're hearing, the vibrations. And then when we recognize that we're in this thought construct, we recognize that everything is just a field of thought. That's all there is. So like even these 7 layers, the 7 hermetic principles, the 7 chakras are basically telling us this, right? So that the hermetic principle that relates to sight, right, is rhythm. You get locked into a rhythm, right? You get literally, I mean, you know, you've been dancing, you get locked into a rhythm. And if you're dancing and you want to break out of that rhythm, you've literally got to feel the music to break out of the rhythm that you've locked into, to find a new rhythm, to lock into a new rhythm. So vibration is how you lock in, you look into a rhythm. The rhythm locks you in to the muse, the idea, which is a muse, music. And then when you feel it, you feel it. You fail that rhythm to create a new rhythm. You feel, and you find the next rhythm. And it's all really about vibration. So it's like interesting when we look at that, you know, and the whole structure of reality and our senses, I think, is like really, this is why when Ronan's ideas come out, I don't agree with him. When Gabriel's ideas come out, I don't agree with him. I'm like, no, yes, according to the model we've been taught, but let's not use that model. Let's look into true deep occult teachings, what they're really telling us about the nature of reality. And then we'll notice that actually they want us to believe that we're locked onto this world, right? But they don't want us to recognize that this world is actually Mars. This world is actually Jupiter. This world is actually all of these. We're only experiencing one particular frequency lock of potential. shift the frequency, and we're on all these other different planets. And this is why these planets affect us. This is why in our astrological charts these planets have relevance, because they're a vibrational frequency, and we can see them reflected in the ethers, right? So we see them moving, but these are literally different versions of reality, I would say. But for me, they're very much living beings. Like have experienced them talking to me, when in trance, different different planets talking, and they each have a different lingo. They each have a different message. you know Mars wants to teach you how to move things, bend things. you know Venus wants to teach you how to bring life through into things. And so each planet is trying to teach us their own little lesson, you know of the nature of creation and reality, and fundamental structure of being. But it's also like an important lock in to this eye, and that eye then becomes that major symbol of the arc, right? And the arc locks us into this reality perception. So yeah, I think like the more I think about it, the more I realize I don't really believe anything, but I believe a little bit of everything.
That's it. That's why synchromysticism is so key to understanding this stuff. And posted a video on my Instagram breaking down the word synchromysticism, and it's just like you just see all of these tiny little pieces of the puzzle, which gradually build, like make the picture slightly bigger and helps you understand a bit more. Maybe a better way of putting it is it's like it opens up new doors in your mind or your mind's eye, like these gods or guardians of dimensions, like the planets or other gods. They're like Mars being the builder, maybe like Marduk, he was a builder, built the Tower of Babel. But like these are just archetypal energies, and I think that when you can tap into these, it opens up doors in your mind. And these doors, like some keys for them, or example is understanding language, like splitting words, a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Latin. If you see a word, like I mentioned boa earlier, being 201, it's like, yeah, the boa is a constrictor. Event 201 was to constrict us and stuff. You can have fun with it, and that's what it's about. It's just about having fun, having that childlike, playful mentality. Because as soon as this stuff stops being fun, there's no point in it, is there? And also we started off talking about Saturn. People forget that another side of Saturn is Kairos, which is curious time, which is more of a playful energy. And I think it's really important that people were sort of, rather than being bogged down by stuff, is just like have fun with it, have fun with words, like talk a little bit like a baby, like then you can understand the essence of what the word actually means. My mind gets blown all the time by language and stuff. I have fun with it, and opens up new doors all the time.
Absolutely, dear brother. Fundamentally fun conversation. We'll have to pick up where we left off next time. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Talking
Any
about
rabbit holes.
these planets and the cosmos. We'll have to look at the cosmos, like, because the substance of water. I mean, water is really this key. I think that is really like the fundamental thing for understanding the structure of reality is understanding water, like you say. And of course, like, it's the source of life. Like it's where life comes from. It's what life needs. It's what life wants. It's also what moves things around and changes the perspective and refocuses light and changes the medium, the medium we're in, medium of thought, medium of consciousness, medium of existentiality. And so, the only thing, according to, and I don't believe what they tell us, by the way, like they tell us that Mars is just dry and there's no water. I'm like, well, maybe. Sounds plausible, but maybe there is water. I don't know. Until I've been there, I don't know. And I won't make a decision that there is or isn't, because It might seem logical that there is, and I go, well, I'll give them benefit of the doubt up to like 65-70%. Like that's where it ends. Like I don't know, but the idea, one of the ideas that they've presented, and it could be part of their circus tree of information, right? Like we always got to keep that in the back of our mind, is that the only thing that escapes a black hole is water. But that makes so much sense, because the only thing that comes out of a womb is water, right? Now they've told us black holes is XYZ. Maybe black holes are wombs, right? It would make a lot more sense that the universe has got big wombs, and these wombs are churning out stars. Okay, that's a much more sensible way for me to think of a black hole than whatever they've told me it is. But now you think about what they tell you and you go, well, black holes don't exist. Well, maybe they don't, but maybe they're wombs out there, and the wombs give birth to something else. And but according to the thing, the only thing that escapes a womb is water. In other words, like the toroidal field, actually it repels water. So they say that if you go to the edge of a black hole, it's raining out of the black hole. What an interesting concept, you know.
That's so interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's the only thing. It's got to do with the diamagnetic, dielectric properties, that the ionization, it actually causes the water to become polarized to the opposite frequency of that, and it pushes away from it. And so you can imagine that these wombs are pushing water out, and that the water is traveling through the universe and producing life. And then our firmament, right? Our firmament is made out of water, and that water pressure is moving outwards. So what they call space, more likely is water. Yeah. And that water pressure is moving outwards. And so we detect the growing expansion of the universe. It could just be the water coming out of the wombs, adding more water. And this is like a single water droplet that's going to explode to form lots of little water droplets. Yeah. And then each little water droplet will grow and grow and grow and grow until it becomes a big overladen water droplet and explodes. And then each time each one of these little water droplets explodes, we call it a big bang. But it's just an exploding of a water droplet, where that water droplet translates itself and becomes loads of like little water drops, and the whole universe is just like rain. Yeah, I don't know. This is just
one of
random concept.
Each one of the water drops contains all the information of the whole ocean as well. So just multiple fractals of, you know. Yeah, that's great, Franklin. That's beautiful.
So Mars is one water droplet. We're one water droplet, but we're the same water droplet in the same ocean. But perception says we aren't. But maybe on some level we are. It's a really interesting concept. Why do we have these qualities within us, these planetary qualities? If that makes sense. Why are you ruled by Mars? Why am I ruled by the sun? You with me? Like, where does this come from? Why do we have this astrological knowledge? There must be something more to the nature of the space-time that we're not getting. Anyway, it's been a fun conversation, dear brother. I hope you guys in the chat enjoyed the conversation, got as much from it as what we got from it. And it's an honor as always. And thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. I had a great chat. Take care.
Yeah. Big love to all of you. I hope your family is going to be absolutely happy and enjoying the day. The last of the summer, enjoy it. Not the last, is it? There's still a bit of summer left for you. Am I right? You guys got some summer
school
left.
Holidays start today. I think our summer lasts till September, I think. So yeah, we've got a little bit left. Yeah. A bit grey as usual, but I'm sure we'll have some sunny days.
You mentioned Brighton to me, and I always used to enjoy my summers in Brighton. There's something about Brighton, although I must admit, when I saw what they'd done with the place last time I went there, I was really disappointed. It's not the Brighton I knew from like quarter century ago.
I don't live in Brighton. I couldn't live in Brighton. I live like 20 minutes away. I want to get that clear. Like, because there's something in the air there. I don't live there.
I'll tell you, if you had been in Brighton 25 years ago, it was really lovely. Hove, Brighton, all of those areas. Then about 15 years ago, is it that long? It's more than 15 years ago. It started changing 20 years ago. And between 20 and 15 years ago, it had become something else. And I remember going to Brighton, and it must have been about 15 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's happened to the place? I was so disappointed. They changed everything, and the whole frequency of the place had changed, the energy had changed, and every time I went there since then, which was probably the last time I was in Brighton, must have been about 11, 12 years, something. And I remember going there, and I was like so sad, just because, I think the last time I went to Brighton was 2012. Wow.
Wow.
2012. Was that the last time I went to Brighton? No, I think I must have gone in 13 or 13, 14. But anyway, I was just so disappointed with what they'd done with the place. So, but I will always have this nostalgic memory of Brighton from the late 90s going into the 2000s, and just how it was such a hub of artists. You would go onto Brighton Beach, there would be musicians everywhere, and there would be artists everywhere, and everybody would be making music, and the old bull would come to like kick and stomp on our fires, and it was like a poet town. And then when I went back there, like, there were no poets, there were no artists, there were no musicians. Well, they were, but they were just trying to make money. It was just, something was different, something was lost.
The frequency has definitely changed. I'm thankful. I was born in 92, so I grew up not having a phone, and I've seen how the world was before technology, kind of. So I'm quite lucky. It's probably the last generation, but yeah, something's definitely changed. The frequencies changed for sure, and it's to do with 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. Maybe we can talk about that sometime, but that's all Operation Bluebeam, like trickling down. I'm lucky because in my town we have one inactive 5G tower, whereas in Brighton they've got loads, and I'm sure when they do activate this one, I'm sure it won't last long. So we've got better frequency here for sure.
Get the kids on it, man. Teach the kids, like, while they're too young to get criminal charges. They can't actually charge you, so that thing doesn't belong there, kids. You didn't hear from me. Anyway, big love to you, brother. Big love to all of you. Hope you got what you came for. See you guys next time. Take it easy. Keep it sweet. Hey, we can do this next week sometime. Let me know when. Are Mondays a good day for you? Not Mondays, sorry, Tuesdays.
Yeah, usually Tuesdays would work best, or Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
We might be going away next week, so not next week, but the week afterwards, either on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be around.
Okay, peeps. So you get that? Maybe not next week, then the week after, Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll keep you posted.
I'll let you know about next week, though. So stay tuned. Maybe next Tuesday.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Om Shanti. Well, big love to everybody. Take it easy. Keep it sweet. Big love to you. It's been an honor having you all here. Namaste. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Dham. Jai Bholenath. Sabke saath. Enjoy. Keep smiling.